All right, everybody, welcome back. You may have noticed there's not a lot of testimony about the classified documents case, and there's a reason for that. Judge Eileen Cannon, still has a standing order blocking the release of Volume 2 of Jack Smith's final report. She set it to expire February 24th. The 11th Circuit set it to expire just Friday, January 2nd. So we're keeping an eye on that. But he addressed that multiple times during the hearing, and here's how he answered an early question about it.
Before I turn over to Mr. Jayapal, are you able to speak about Volume 2 today?
I'm not.
Can you explain what you can and cannot speak about with respect to Volume 2?
Well, there is an order of Judge Cannon, an injunction regarding Volume 2. I want to make very clear that I do not want to do anything to violate that injunction or that order. And so, given that I have not looked at Volume 2 since I submitted it to the Attorney General almost a year ago, I do not have a exact recollection of what is in there and not. And so, unless something is in a public filing, or and people can point me to a public filing, or in I think the category that was mentioned in the letter that we got this morning of publicly, I can't remember the terminology, but properly publicly released information. I do not want to, I want to be clear, I do not want to violate that order, and I don't want to do anything that could even be remotely construed as violating that order.
Wait, so, I'm sorry, but DOJ did not let you review Volume 2 of your report?
It may well have been there, but I chose not to review it because I didn't want any implication whatsoever that I was somehow violating the order by looking at it, not being a member of the department now.
And then Dan Goldman asked about Volume 2, but in the context of Trump yanking Jack Smith's security clearance, which Smith says is actually quite normal when you leave government. But the security clearance of his attorneys will come up in a later clip, but watch this.
Can I go back to Volume 2 just for a second? You said that the department gave you access to Volume 2 and you chose not to use it?
That's correct. I believe so. I did not, given the injunction, want to look at that. And so I believe it was there, but I was looking at other things. I didn't look at that.
Did they give you access to any classified information that was a part of your files?
No.
Did you or your attorneys have any discussions with the department about that?
I don't recall.
Do you still have your security clearance?
No.
When and how was that taken away?
I think in the normal course of things, when you leave government service, you sign papers basically saying you don't have your security clearance anymore. It's vague, but that's my recollection of what happened at my conclusion of my service.
Do you know if your attorneys requested for you to have temporary security clearance so you could review your own files?
I don't believe we did.
And because you didn't look at the Volume 2 that they provided to you, you don't know whether or not classified material was provided to you in that volume?
Again, I don't want to speak about anything that could infer the content of Volume 2.
And of course, don't forget, Kash Patel comes up in Volume 2. That's why a lot of senators, at least on the Democratic side, wanted to get Volume 2 while considering and providing advice and consent when Kash Patel was nominated to be the FBI director, because he's in Volume 2. So he's asked about that. And Kash Patel comes up in this exchange. So watch how Jack Smith handles this.
In the last hour with the minority, Mr. Smith, we asked you about folks that were interviewed during the course of your January 6th investigation. I think we talked about Mr. Giuliani, we mentioned Mr. Meadows, we mentioned Vice President Pence. An individual that I failed to ask about was whether you interviewed Director Kash Patel as part of your investigation with Special Counsel's office.
I can't get into that because of the Judge Cannon's injunction.
Okay. Did Director Patel testify before the grand jury as part of your investigation?
Same answer.
You mind saying that just for the record, to make it the record?
I cannot answer that question due to Judge Cannon's injunction.
And did Director Patel assert his right against self-incrimination as part of your investigation?
Can't answer that question.
In general, just using your years of experience as a prosecutor, are you aware of any prohibitions that would prevent Mr. Patel or Director Patel from disclosing his own testimony if he did testify with the special counsel's office?
Just as a general matter, not specific to anything with this case, my understanding is the witnesses can disclose their own testimony.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a couple of questions about why this testimony happened behind closed doors and not publicly, because there was a public back and forth with letters between Jim Jordan and Jack Smith's attorneys. So here's an exchange with Jared Moskowitz. Watch this.
Did you see the comments by the president's chief of staff talking about retribution?
I did.
So everyone was fired. You're here on a deposition. Your lawyers lost their security clearance. Seems like it meets not only the definition in Webster, it seems like this is exactly what Trump's chief of staff was talking about. No?
I have no doubt that the president wants to seek retribution against me. I have no doubt that that's the intent.
I don't want to put you off. In
Yeah.
fact, the exact quote was, he doesn't wake up thinking about it, but when there's an opportunity, he goes for it. I mean, this seems like a opportunity. Do you think the White House gave instructions to Chairman Jordan to set this deposition?
So I am eyes wide open that this president will seek retribution against me if he can. I know that. I don't, frankly, connect that with this hearing. I don't have any connection. I came here. I was asked to come
No, you
here.
think there were zero conversations between the White House and Chairman Jordan?
I don't know, but I'm here in good faith, and I was asked to come testify.
So it's interesting that this took place behind closed doors. Jim Jordan denied it. I think we can tell by the content of the interview and the release, in that the fact that they released it in the evening on New Year's Eve, that Jim Jordan was very glad that he didn't interview Jack Smith in public. And here's Congresswoman Jayapal asking about whether Smith would still be willing to testify publicly at some point in the future.
And why were you willing to appear voluntarily in public?
We conducted our investigation in a way that I'm proud of. I'm particularly proud of the people I conducted the investigation with, and I wanted to speak for them.
And is it generally the practice of special counsels to appear in a public hearing? I know you have a couple of questions on this, but I want to reiterate this.
That is my general understanding, yes.
And can you tell us again why I understand you want to stick up for the prosecutors, the people that were part of the investigation. Can you tell us why it's important for the American people to hear directly from you about your investigation, what you discovered, the process that you went through?
Well, as I said in the beginning of, I think, my opening remarks, there have been mischaracterizations about my work. We did our work in the best traditions of the department, and I know I keep coming back to this, but the mischaracterizations that most offend me are not just prosecutors, but career FBI agents, support staff in the department. These are people who devoted their lives to public servants, to being public servants. They have not, they're not self-promoters. They're not people who like to go in front of the cameras and defend themselves. And I feel that they have been vilified in a way that I think is awful.
What's the effect of that on our democracy?
Well, I think it drives people away from public service.
Is it a form of witness intimidation?
I think it's even deeper than that. I think, when we get to attacking the people who are the good guys,
Yeah.
I just don't know where that goes. It's counter to how I was raised.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, even after this deposition today, are you still willing to appear at a public hearing before this committee and speak directly to the American people about your investigation?
Yes.
Notice Jack Smith is very adamant. This came up over and over again in his testimony. He's very adamant about standing up for the people, the career prosecutors and agents at the FBI and people who worked at the DOJ and prosecutors on his team, all of the people on his staff that worked for him. He's very, very keen on defending them and their honor. That is quite a difference from people like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who never mention their employees, ever. They are just like, it's been the honor of a lifetime to work for Trump. Bye, because Dan Bongino's leaving. But they never mention them. They never stick up for them. And Jack Smith is making sure to do that in this testimony. Like I said, it happened quite a bit. Now, earlier I said we'd get into the First Amendment arguments. And although Jack Smith laid all this out in detail in the indictments and won litigation in briefings over the fact that the First Amendment doesn't cover fraud and its well-established precedent, up to and including the Supreme Court, Republicans still can't get the hang of how the First Amendment works. Here is a Republican staffer trying to, first of all, normalize what Trump did on January 6th, and Jack Smith refuting it soundly.
The president's statements that he believed the election was rife with fraud, those certainly are statements that are protected by the First Amendment, correct?
Absolutely not if they are made to target a lawful government function and they are made with knowing falsity. No, they're not. That was my point about fraud not being protected by the First Amendment.
I mean, there's a long list of disputed elections. I mean, the election of 1800, 1960, year 2000, where candidates believe they were wronged by because they lost. And there's a long history of candidates speaking out about they believe there's been fraud, there's been other problems with the integrity of the election process. And I think you would agree that those types of statements are sort of at the core of the First Amendment rights of a presidential candidate, right?
There is no historical analog for what President Trump did in this case. As we said in the indictment, he was free to say that he thought he won the election. He was even free to say falsely that he won the election. But what he was not free to do was violate federal law and use knowingly false statements about election fraud to target a lawful government function. Mm-hmm. That he was not allowed to do. And that differentiates this case from any past.
Now, here's Jack Smith again discussing the very clear carve out for fraud, which, again, citing case law off the top of his head. And he compares that with what Trump did. He compares what Trump did on January 6th to affinity fraud. He likes it to affinity fraud. This is a very good, succinct argument. If there's anybody in your life who doesn't quite understand how fraud isn't covered by the First Amendment, this is a great clip to play for them.
Can you help now bring us full circle on how you analyze the First Amendment claims with the knowledge of the fraud that Mr. Trump was putting out to the American public in 2020 and 2021?
Sure. From a legal perspective, this is really quite clear. I think all of us want to make sure people's First Amendment rights are not abridged in a way that they shouldn't be. I think I certainly feel that way. I'm sure everybody in this room feels that way. But there is a very clear carve out for fraud in our case law. The Supreme Court, I think there's one case, is the Stevens case, talks about that, and there are others. And so when you're committing a fraud, meaning you're not just saying something that's untrue, you're saying it knowing it's untrue or with reckless disregard for the truth, that's not protected by the First Amendment. People commit crimes all the time using words. And when someone commits a fraud, an investment fraud, or someone commits an affinity fraud where you try to gain someone's trust, get them to trust you as a general matter, and then you rip them off, you defraud them. That's all words, but it's not protected by the First Amendment. And in a lot of ways, this case was an affinity fraud. The president had people who had built up trust in him, including people in his own party, and he preyed on that. Some people wouldn't do it, others would. we're lucky that enough wouldn't, that the election was upheld.
All right, and to wrap it up today, I wanted to point out some exchanges about the threats that Jack Smith faces, and his staff and his team and his lawyers, and the retribution that he's facing. He's facing a criminal investigation into his investigations. And these lines of questioning are important in the face of the onslaught of Republican questioning that happened over the past 8 hours of testimony, implying that Jack Smith is the one weaponizing the Justice Department. And here in this clip, Jamie Raskin asked Jack Smith about the removal of career professionals by the Trump administration.
Have you made any statements, or are you willing to make any statements on the firing and removal of the Department of Justice prosecutors who worked on January 6th, on people at the FBI who were involved in the FBI investigation, or on the president's mass summary pardon of 1,600 January 6th insurrectionists and other people involved?
Yeah. I think what has happened to career prosecutors and career FBI agents is awful. It's contrary to the rule of law. It's contrary to who I think we are as a country. One of the agents on our case, he served his country overseas multiple times, war zones. Family of dedicated public servants, wife's family, dedicated public servants. He got fired for doing his job 2 weeks after his wife died. I went to the funeral. I saw his family. I saw a church full of public servants. No reason a person like that should have to go through that. And I'm getting emotional. I'm sorry about that. But I just think that's wrong.
And in this next exchange, he lays out Trump's weaponization and retribution against Jack Smith pretty succinctly.
Mr. Smith, you spoke earlier today about threats and attacks against, made by Donald Trump against witnesses, prosecutors, judges who had challenged him, including threats against yourself. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So did President Trump target you personally in posts on Truth Social?
Yes.
Are you aware, for example, that he called you a, quote, deranged lunatic, unquote, quote, Trump hater, unquote, and, quote, psycho?
Yes.
Do you recall that on October 15th this year, President Trump speaking to reporters standing next to the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General said, quote, deranged Jack Smith, in my opinion, is a criminal, unquote. Then he also talked about investigating Lisa Monaco, Andrew Weissman, and Adam Schiff, saying, quote, I hope they're looking at all these people and I'm allowed to find out. I'm in theory the chief law enforcement officer, unquote.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And are you aware that President Trump posted on Truth Social on October 29th of this year that, quote, these thugs should all be investigated and put in prison, a disgrace to humanity, deranged Jack Smith is a criminal, with 3 exclamation marks, unquote.
That may be. I know there were several posts like this.
Okay. Do you think those were a potential direction to the Department of Justice to retaliate against you because of your role as special counsel in the investigation of him?
Yes.
You are joined by your counsel today from Covington and Burling, is that right?
Yes.
And did President Trump or the White House take any actions against your attorneys due to their relationship with you?
Yes.
And what action did they take?
They filed an executive order against the law firm and sought to withdraw the security clearances of my attorney.
I'm just going to offer this as Exhibit 20, and this is exactly what you just talked about. So Exhibit 20 is an executive order issued by
I know.
the White House on February 25, 2025. And it is entitled Suspension of Security Clearances and Evaluation of Government Contracts. And I just want to read into the record that this executive order says, I hereby direct the Attorney General and all other relevant heads of executive departments and agencies to immediately take steps consistent with applicable law to suspend any active security clearances held by Peter Koski and all members, partners, and employees of Covington and Burling LLP who assisted former Special Counsel Jack Smith during his time as Special Counsel, pending a review and determination of their roles and responsibilities, if any, in the weaponization of the judicial process. And the executive order also directs the Attorney General and heads of agencies to take such action as are necessary to terminate any engagement of Covington and Burling LLP by any agency to the maximum extent permitted by law and consistent with a memorandum that shall be issued by the Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
To your knowledge, is this executive order still in effect?
I believe it is.
What do you think was his purpose for issuing this executive order?
To seek retribution against me.
Is it also to harm your relationship with your attorney and to make it more difficult for lawyers to represent you?
I think it's to chill people from having an association with me.
I just want to say for the record, we're still here, proud to represent Jack Smith.
And I figured we'd end the show on my favorite moment. I think that this tiny little piece of testimony spoke volumes, and it came pretty early on in the testimony too. And I think it sort of set the tone for how the rest of the testimony would go. Like I said, despite the numerous conspiracy theories that Republicans have about Jack Smith's investigation and what really happened, what they say really happened on January 6th, they seemed reticent to continue to parrot those ridiculous talking points in the face of Jack Smith because of his demeanor and the things that he was saying, his succinct answers, his recall of law and case citations. So I think that even though I want to end on this clip, even though it came early on in his testimony, but I think it's just a really good way. I think it's just a really good way to end this particular set of clips. Let's watch.
And just to kind of finish up on this point, you yourself, I'm not sure if this was discussed by the majority, but have you yourself been intimidated as a result of the actions that you took in this case?
I'm not going to be intimidated.
I will not be intimidated. So good. All right, there was some testimony I didn't include with Jim Jordan trying desperately for a gotcha moment, questioning Jack Smith about how he got his job. He said he was offered the job, and that's how he got it, but that he did have a conversation with a friend of his when Smith was still at The Hague. He called a friend of his because, he had heard that his friend had gotten a job at the Justice Department coming back out from private service. And so he called his friend to congratulate him. And during that conversation, Smith testified that his friend asked him if he'd ever return to Main Justice, because he was at The Hague at the time prosecuting war crimes. And Jack Smith told the committee and told Jim Jordan that he told his friend that if the job was right, if he got the right offer, that he would come back to the Department of Justice. And so it's actually my hope that in January of 2029, that someone calls Jack Smith from the president-elect's transition team and offers him the job of Attorney General of the United States. Now, some may say he's too entrenched in politics because he investigated Donald Trump to be considered. But I think this testimony demonstrates his apolitical nature, his command of the facts, and his details are astounding. His time at The Hague prosecuting war crimes is more than relevant. And his willingness to follow the facts and the law without fear or favor, I think, make him an excellent candidate for the job. And I think it might be a job that he's willing to do. Also, his willingness to speak out, I think, is important. I think we were missing that in the Merrick Garland Department of Justice. There was just a lot of silence. So I'd like to think he would consider Attorney General as the right job for him to return to Main Justice again. There were a lot of policies that he had to follow as special counsel, and I could tell he didn't always agree with them, but he was bound by them nonetheless. And I think he would have no problem reforming them. And I think we're going to need a reformer in that job come 2029. Just my 2 cents. Thank you all so much for watching and listening to this special episode of Unjustified in partnership with the Midas Touch Network. Andy McCabe will be back next week. I'm Allison Gill. We'll see you then. Unjustified is written and executive produced by Allison Gill, with additional research and analysis by Andrew McCabe. Sound design and editing is by Molly Hockey, with art and web design by Joel Reeder at Moxie Design Studios. The theme music for Unjustified is written and performed by Ben Folds, and the show is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned independent podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, please visit mswmedia.com.